The earliest surviving records do not describe a ship, they describe absences. Survey logs from long-range explorator fleets operating along the galactic fringe during the closing centuries of the Great Crusade record repeated sensor anomalies in otherwise charted void corridors. Auspex sweeps returned mass readings without corresponding energy signatures. Pit capture arrays registered silhouettes that did not persist across sequential frames. Vox traffic recovered from these regions contained fragments of binary signal structures inconsistent with any known standard template construct format, yet too ordered to be natural interference. Initial classifications listed these findings as calibration faults. Follow-up expeditions disagreed. A recovered Mechanicum data slate from an abandoned deep void monitoring station in the Segmentum Obscurus describes a structure of extreme scale transiting the system's outer heliopause without detectable warp translation signatures. The object was visible for less than 48 standard minutes before disappearing from all sensor ranges simultaneously. No debris wake, gravitational distortion, or empiric residue was recorded. The station's logic engines entered recursive error states shortly after the event, repeatedly outputting the same phrase in corrupted binary cant. The phrase translates imperfectly as "vessel exceeds schema." Similar accounts appear scattered across Mechanicum vaults, Administratum transit ledgers, and sealed Crusade-era expeditionary reports. Individually, each record lacks sufficient corroboration. Collectively, they form a pattern spanning millennia, sectors, and political eras. The common elements remain consistent: extreme mass, non-standard energy behavior, machine logic exceeding known Imperial design limits, and, in several cases, the presence of pre-Imperial technological signatures that should not, by all accepted doctrine, still exist. In several instances, these findings are accompanied by eyewitness testimony from voidsmen, explorators, and bonded servitors whose neural records survived data extraction. Their descriptions avoid metaphor. They speak instead of scale misjudged at first glance, of structures that appear closer than they are, of hull geometries that do not conform to known voidcraft principles. One recorded testimony from a Mechanicum lex mechanic notes that the vessel's surface appeared layered, not armoured in the conventional sense, but stratified, as though multiple epochs of construction had been superimposed without erasing earlier forms. The most heavily redacted of these records originate from Martian archives themselves. Within the sealed vaults of the Adeptus Mechanicus exist fragmented references to Ark-class sanctum vessels, described not as warships, but as migratory reliquaries. These references predate the Treaty of Mars and, in some cases, appear to originate from the closing centuries of Old Night. Their language is cautious, bordering on reverent. They do not describe active construction programs. Instead, they imply rediscovery. According to these fragments, certain void-born structures were never truly built by the Imperium or even by Mars. Rather, they were inherited, recovered, or awakened. The Mechanicum does not claim authorship, it claims stewardship. The term that eventually consolidates these disparate references appears first in a heavily damaged Crusade-era cogitation index recovered from a derelict Mechanicum ark drifting beyond the Ghoul stars. The index lists multiple vessel classifications, most of which correspond to known ship types. One entry does not. It is not assigned tonnage, armament, or crew capacity. Instead, it is cross-referenced with vault inventories, gene-locked command hierarchies, and forbidden machine rights. The designation attached to it is simple and absolute: the Ark Mechanicus. By the closing years of the Great Crusade, the existence of Ark Mechanicus vessels was no longer purely theoretical within Mechanicum circles, though knowledge of them remained deliberately fragmented. Each Forge world possessed its own partial understanding, shaped by localized doctrine, recovered data fragments, and political necessity. No complete blueprint existed in any single location. This absence appears intentional. What is consistently agreed upon is that an Ark Mechanicus is not merely a ship in the Imperial sense. It is a mobile Forge world, a self-contained nexus of production, research, data preservation, and machine cult authority. Its primary purpose is not warfare, though it is capable of it on a scale rivaling entire battle fleets. Its purpose is survival. Construction records, where they exist, suggest that Ark Mechanicus vessels are assembled over centuries rather than years. Unlike standard Imperial warships, which follow broadly standardized hull patterns derived from ancient templates, each Ark Mechanicus is unique. Hull geometries vary significantly between known examples. Some are described as elongated and cathedral-like, others as sprawling agglomerations of modular void structures fused together by later additions. This suggests adaptive construction, where new components are integrated as technological capability or recovered knowledge permits. The materials used in their construction further separate them from conventional Imperial voidcraft. Adamantium and plasteel are present, but they are supplemented by substances whose exact composition is either classified or no longer understood. References are made to phase-hardened alloys, void-resistant crystalline lattices, and self-repairing machine skins derived from archaeotech origins. In some cases, these materials exhibit properties that challenge established Mechanicus physics, such as localized reality stabilization fields or resistance to warp-induced corruption without reliance on Geller field harmonics. The power sources of Ark Mechanicus vessels are similarly divergent from standard Imperial designs. While plasma reactors remain a core component, they're often described as secondary systems. Primary power generation appears to be derived from technologies recovered from the Dark Age of technology, including singularity containment engines, matter-antimatter annihilation cores, and energy reclamation systems capable of drawing power from both real space and controlled empiric interactions. Several Mechanicum texts imply that these power cores are partially sentient, or at least possess self-regulating machine intelligences far exceeding the capabilities of modern Imperial cogitators. This has led to intense doctrinal debate within the cult Mechanicus, as such systems approach the forbidden boundary between sanctified machine spirit and true artificial intelligence. Officially, these systems are declared compliant. Unofficially, they are feared. The origins of Ark Mechanicus vessels are not confined to a single era. Some are believed to have been constructed during the height of the Dark Age of technology, intended as interstellar repositories of human knowledge and industrial capacity, in anticipation of systemic collapse. Others may have been assembled during Old Night by isolated forge enclaves, attempting to preserve technological continuity amid galactic fragmentation. A smaller number are thought to be post-Imperial constructions, assembled by Mars itself using recovered archaeotech and ancient schematics, whose origins are no longer traceable. What unites all Ark Mechanicus vessels, regardless of origin, is their function as technological lifeboats. Each Ark Mechanicus carries within it vast data vaults containing standard template construct fragments, experimental schemata, and forbidden research deemed too valuable or too dangerous to remain planetside. Entire manufactoria districts are embedded within their hulls, capable of producing war engines, voidcraft components, and advanced weaponry without external support. Gene labs, cybernetic forges, and logic temples operate in parallel, overseen by hierarchies of tech priests whose authority aboard the vessel supersedes that of most planetary fabricator generals. The interior design of an Ark Mechanicus reflects its layered history. Older sections often retain design philosophies from pre-Imperial eras, featuring clean geometries, automated systems, and minimal reliance on human oversight. Newer editions conform more closely to modern Mechanicus aesthetics, with ritualized machinery, devotional inscriptions, and extensive use of servitor labor. This results in internal environments that can shift dramatically over short distances, moving from silent, near-pristine chambers to labyrinthine forge halls thick with incense, heat, and machine noise. Environmental conditions aboard these vessels are tightly controlled but not standardized. Atmospheric composition varies between sections depending on function, with some areas maintaining near-vacuum conditions for specialized processes. Lighting ranges from harsh lumen strips to bioluminescent panels of unknown origin. Soundscapes are similarly variable, from near-total silence to constant mechanical reverberation. Crew acclimatization is considered a matter of doctrinal discipline rather than comfort. Archaeological evidence suggests that some Ark Mechanicus vessels have remained operational for tens of thousands of years with minimal external resupply. This endurance is attributed to their closed-loop resource systems, including advanced recycling, matter conversion, and energy reclamation technologies. In extreme cases, entire sections of the vessel can be sealed and placed into temporal stasis, preserving critical systems or data until reactivation is deemed necessary. The question of command authority aboard an Ark Mechanicus is complex. While nominally under the jurisdiction of the Adeptus Mechanicus, these vessels often operate with significant autonomy. Their commanding tech priests are selected through processes that combine doctrinal rank, genetic suitability, and compatibility with the vessel's machine spirit. Once assigned, removal is rare and often fatal, either due to direct execution or irreversible neural integration with command systems. Imperial oversight is minimal. The Administratum records Ark Mechanicus movements when it can, but rarely questions their purpose. The Imperial Navy treats them with cautious respect, recognizing both their strategic value and their potential threat. Even the Inquisition approaches them carefully, aware that the loss of an Ark Mechanicus would represent not merely a military setback, but a catastrophic erosion of humanity's remaining technological inheritance. By the dawn of the 41st millennium, the Ark Mechanicus stands not as a single vessel, but as a classification encompassing a small, unknown number of unique constructs scattered across the Imperium and beyond. Each is a relic of humanity's past ambition and a contingency against its future collapse. They are not symbols of progress. They are safeguards against extinction. They are known, collectively and individually, as the Ark Mechanicus. Imperial attempts to standardize the specifications of an Ark Mechanicus have consistently failed. Unlike Imperial Navy capital ships, whose dimensions, displacement ranges, and performance envelopes fall within broadly predictable tolerances, Ark Mechanicus vessels resist meaningful classification. Administratum naval registries often resort to comparative descriptors rather than precise figures, listing them as exceeding battleship tonnage, rivaling or surpassing Gloriana-class hull mass, or matching small moons in effective displacement. These comparisons are imprecise, but they reflect a consistent conclusion. Ark Mechanicus vessels operate at the extreme upper limits of what humanity can deploy in void space. Hull dimensions vary widely. The smallest confirmed Ark Mechanicus vessels measure several kilometers in length, already surpassing most Imperial battleships. Larger examples extend well beyond this, their structures sprawling outward rather than adhering to linear hull geometries. Many are not singular hulls in the conventional sense, but composite superstructures, formed from fused shipyards, forge complexes, and void platforms integrated over centuries. This results in silhouettes that defy symmetrical analysis, with mass distributed unevenly yet stabilized through advanced internal gravitic control systems. Mass distribution is managed through layered gravitic compensators embedded deep within the hull. These systems allow Ark Mechanicus vessels to maneuver despite their size without inducing catastrophic structural stress. Unlike Imperial Navy vessels, which rely on brute force thrust alignment and corrective maneuvers, Ark Mechanicus ships subtly reshape internal gravity fields to counteract inertia. This produces movement profiles that appear unnervingly smooth for objects of such scale, often described in logs as gliding rather than accelerating. Propulsion systems aboard Ark Mechanicus vessels reflect their hybrid technological lineage. Standard plasma drives are present but serve primarily as auxiliary propulsion. Primary thrust is generated through advanced drive assemblies whose origins trace back to Dark Age schematics. These systems utilize high-efficiency plasma matter conversion engines, capable of sustained output far beyond Imperial norms without corresponding increases in thermal signature. In some recorded cases, Ark Mechanicus vessels maintain steady acceleration for extended durations that would cripple conventional voidcraft. Sublight speed? while rarely prioritized due to the vessel's strategic role, remains formidable. Despite their mass, Ark Mechanicus ships are capable of matching or exceeding the cruising velocities of Imperial capital ships. Their acceleration curves are gradual but relentless, allowing them to reach high velocities over time with exceptional fuel efficiency. This makes them ill-suited to pursuit engagements, but highly effective in strategic redeployment or withdrawal under fire. Warp transit capabilities are similarly unconventional. Ark Mechanicus vessels are equipped with warp engines of extreme scale, often augmented by stabilizing systems that reduce reliance on standard Geller field harmonics. Some Mechanicum records suggest the presence of layered reality insulation fields that partially anchor sections of the vessel to real space during translation, reducing warp turbulence effects. These systems are poorly understood and not replicated elsewhere within the Imperium. As a result, Ark Mechanicus vessels exhibit unusually stable warp travel characteristics. While not immune to warp hazards, they suffer significantly fewer translation mishaps relative to their size. Warp emergence signatures recorded by Imperial astropaths often indicate reduced empiric disturbance, a trait that has fueled speculation regarding advanced navigational logic engines or pre-Imperial warp mathematics embedded within their systems. Defensive strength is where the Ark Mechanicus truly diverges from conventional voidcraft doctrine. Hull armor is layered not merely for impact resistance, but for survivability under prolonged multi-vector assault. Adamantium-reinforced plating is interwoven with energy-dispersive lattices designed to absorb, redirect, or bleed off incoming force. In some sections, armor layers exhibit self-healing properties, slowly reforming after damage through automated molecular realignment processes. Void shield arrays aboard Ark Mechanicus vessels are vast, multi-tiered systems that extend far beyond standard configurations. Rather than relying on a uniform shield envelope, these ships project overlapping defensive fields of varying intensity and frequency. This creates a stratified shield environment capable of withstanding sustained bombardment by capital-grade weaponry. When one layer collapses, underlying fields remain active, forcing attackers to expend enormous firepower to achieve meaningful penetration. In addition to void shields, Ark Mechanicus vessels deploy localized field distorters that interfere with targeting solutions. Enemy Auspex systems often report fluctuating mass readings, false hull contours, or phantom heat signatures. These effects are not jamming in the traditional sense, but appear to result from active manipulation of sensor interaction with the vessel's outer fields. As a consequence, precision strikes against critical systems are exceedingly difficult. Structural redundancy further enhances survivability. Critical systems are duplicated across multiple isolated compartments, each capable of independent operation. Power conduits are deliberately nonlinear, rerouting energy dynamically to bypass damaged sections. Entire regions of the ship can be sealed, vented, or abandoned without compromising core functionality. This modular resilience allows Ark Mechanicus vessels to absorb damage that would doom lesser ships. Armament aboard an Ark Mechanicus reflects its dual role as a forge sanctuary and a strategic war asset. While not designed primarily for frontline naval combat, its weapons complement rivals those of dedicated warships. Macro-cannon batteries are present in significant numbers, often exceeding battleship-scale calibers. These weapons are typically integrated directly into the hull superstructure, rather than mounted in external turrets, granting them enhanced structural support and firing stability. Lance weaponry is equally formidable. Ark Mechanicus vessels mount multiple high-output lance arrays capable of sustained firing cycles. These lances often incorporate advanced focusing crystals or energy modulation systems derived from archaeotech, allowing them to penetrate void shields with alarming efficiency. Recorded engagements indicate that Ark Mechanicus lances maintain coherence over greater distances than standard Imperial equivalents. Perhaps most concerning to Imperial observers is the presence of experimental and esoteric weapon systems. Some Ark Mechanicus vessels are equipped with gravitic distortion cannons, capable of crushing enemy ships by inducing localized gravitational collapse. Others deploy energy weapons that destabilize molecular bonds across wide impact zones, effectively disintegrating target sections rather than breaching them. The exact specifications of these systems are frequently redacted or classified, even within Mechanicum records. Torpedo and missile capabilities are extensive but unconventional. Rather than relying solely on standardized munitions, Ark Mechanicus vessels often deploy bespoke warheads tailored to specific threats. These may include logic plague payloads designed to cripple enemy machine systems, warp disruption charges intended to destabilize Geller fields, or self-guiding hunter-killer constructs capable of independent target acquisition. Such munitions reflect the Mechanicus' preference for adaptive solutions over mass deployment. Defensive armament against smaller threats is similarly robust. Point defense arrays line vast stretches of the hull, consisting of rapid-fire laser batteries, autocannons, and energy flak systems. These defenses are coordinated by advanced cogitation networks that process targeting data at speeds exceeding standard servitor-controlled systems. As a result, Ark Mechanicus vessels are exceptionally resistant to attack craft swarms and boarding torpedoes. Boarding defense extends beyond conventional weaponry. Internal corridors are designed to be reconfigured during combat, sealing off intruders or redirecting them into kill zones. Automated sentry constructs, combat servitors, and semi-autonomous defense drones patrol critical areas. In some cases, entire sections of the ship can be flooded with lethal atmospheres or exposed to lethal radiation levels without endangering essential systems. The true strength of an Ark Mechanicus, however, lies not solely in its weapons but in its integrated industrial capacity. Each vessel houses massive manufactoria capable of producing replacement components, munitions, and even entire war engines while underway. This allows Ark Mechanicus ships to sustain prolonged operations without resupply, repairing battle damage and replenishing ammunition far faster than conventional fleets. Energy generation capacity supports this industrial output. Power distribution systems are designed to prioritize critical functions dynamically, ensuring that weapon systems, shields, and propulsion remain operational even during peak manufacturing cycles. This balance between combat and production is carefully managed by hierarchies of tech priests and overseen by the vessel's machine spirit. Crew complement aboard Ark Mechanicus vessels is substantial, but proportionally small relative to size. The majority of operational functions are automated or overseen by servitors. Human crew primarily occupy command, maintenance, and ritual roles. Combat readiness drills emphasize system preservation over crew survival, reflecting the Mechanicus doctrine that knowledge and machinery outweigh individual lives. Strength, in the context of an Ark Mechanicus, is therefore not measured solely by firepower or armor thickness. It is measured by endurance, adaptability, and technological superiority. These vessels are designed to persist through wars, collapses, and millennia of neglect if necessary. Their systems are layered, redundant, and self-correcting to a degree unmatched elsewhere in the Imperium. In direct fleet engagements, Ark Mechanicus vessels rarely seek decisive confrontation unless absolutely necessary. Their tactical doctrine favors positional dominance, sustained fire, and attritional superiority. When pressed, they can unleash overwhelming force, but such actions are typically reserved for existential threats to the vessel or its cargo. Imperial Navy after-action reports consistently note that Ark Mechanicus ships do not fight like warships. They fight like fortresses that move. This distinction has shaped how they are deployed and how they are feared. To engage an Ark Mechanicus is to confront not merely a ship, but an entire mobile civilization of machines, weapons, and preserved knowledge, hardened by centuries of refinement and guarded with uncompromising resolve. The question of who pilots an Ark Mechanicus is deceptively simple and persistently misunderstood by external Imperial authorities. In conventional Imperial doctrine, a void ship is commanded by a single individual whose authority flows downward through a defined hierarchy. An Ark Mechanicus does not conform to this model. It is not piloted in the traditional sense, nor is it governed by a singular will in isolation. At the apex of command stands a figure most often designated as the Archmagos Dominus, or Archmagos Explorator, depending on the vessel's primary operational mandate. This individual is not merely a captain. They function as a living interface between the Ark Mechanicus and the wider Imperium, possessing both doctrinal authority and technical compatibility sufficient to commune with the vessel's core systems. Selection for this role is exceptionally restrictive. Candidates are drawn from the highest echelons of the Cult Mechanicus and are subjected to extensive augmentation, cognitive restructuring, and ritualized compatibility trials before integration. Physical characteristics of such individuals are rarely recorded in detail, but where descriptions exist, they follow predictable patterns. Height and mass vary widely due to extensive cybernetic replacement, though most exceed baseline human parameters in both respects. Organic tissue is typically preserved only where required for doctrinal or neurological reasons. Visual organs are often replaced or supplemented by multispectrum augers. Neural architecture is expanded through cranial implants, allowing direct interaction with noospheric command layers. Lifespans extend far beyond natural human limits, measured in centuries rather than decades. Age in the conventional sense becomes irrelevant. Origin worlds differ, though Forge worlds with established Ark Mechanicus ties dominate candidate pools. Personality profiles emphasize cognitive discipline, doctrinal rigidity, and emotional attenuation. Empathy is not selected for. Obedience to the machine, God, and preservation of knowledge are paramount. Social status aboard the vessel is absolute. Within the Ark Mechanicus, the Archmagos authority supersedes nearly all other hierarchies, including planetary fabricator generals when operating beyond Martian jurisdiction. Despite this apparent centralization, command is not singular. Ark Mechanicus vessels operate through distributed authority networks. Beneath the Archmagos exists a conclave of senior tech priests, each responsible for major operational domains such as propulsion, manufactoria, data vault integrity, or defense systems. These individuals possess partial command privileges within their spheres, allowing the vessel to function even if higher authority nodes are compromised. At the deepest level lies the machine intelligence core, commonly referred to as the vessel's machine spirit. In the case of Ark Mechanicus vessels, this entity far exceeds the behavioral complexity of standard Imperial machine spirits. It is not autonomous in the forbidden sense, but it exhibits adaptive decision-making, long-term memory integration, and pattern recognition capabilities rivaling ancient archaeotech constructs. Communion with this intelligence is heavily ritualized and restricted to select individuals whose neural architectures can withstand the cognitive load. Piloting, therefore, is a collective act. Course adjustments, warp translation, and maneuvering decisions emerge from continuous interaction between human command nodes and machine intelligence layers. Orders are not issued so much as negotiated within doctrinal constraints. This symbiosis results in response times and precision that appear unnatural to external observers, particularly during complex maneuvers or emergency situations. The purpose of an Ark Mechanicus is not defined by a single mission profile. Instead, it fulfills multiple overlapping roles that evolve across centuries. At its core, the Ark Mechanicus exists to preserve, protect, and propagate human technological knowledge. This mandate predates the Imperium itself and persists regardless of shifting political realities. Primary among these roles is archival preservation. Each Ark Mechanicus houses immense data vaults containing standard template construct fragments, pre-Imperial schematics, experimental research records, and doctrinally restricted technologies. These archives are not static libraries. They are living repositories, continuously updated through exploration, reverse engineering, and controlled experimentation. Redundancy is extreme. Critical data is stored across multiple isolated systems, often encoded using methods no longer understood outside the vessel. Industrial propagation forms the second core purpose. Ark Mechanicus vessels are capable of manufacturing advanced machinery, voidcraft components, and war engines while underway. This capability allows them to seed newly established forge worlds, reinforce besieged industrial hubs, or reconstruct lost production capacity following catastrophic events. In several recorded instances, entire forge worlds trace their foundational infrastructure to Ark Mechanicus deployments during the Great Crusade. Exploration and recovery represent another critical function. Many Ark Mechanicus vessels were assigned to long-duration exploratory missions, tasked with locating lost human colonies, archaeotech caches, or intact Dark Age facilities. These missions often extended beyond Imperial borders and persisted for centuries without resupply or direct oversight. Successes were not always reported immediately, and some discoveries remain sealed within Mechanicum archives to this day. Militarily, the Ark Mechanicus serves as a strategic deterrent rather than a frontline asset. Its presence within a theatre of war alters the balance of power through sheer technological superiority and logistical resilience. While capable of devastating force, its deployment is typically reserved for conflicts involving existential threats to Mechanicum interests or critical knowledge assets. When committed to battle, preservation of the vessel itself always takes precedence over external objectives. Politically, the Ark Mechanicus operates as a mobile locus of Mechanicum authority. It embodies Martian sovereignty in regions far removed from the Sol system. Its arrival can override planetary command structures, impose doctrinal compliance, and enforce Mechanicum edicts without negotiation. This authority is exercised cautiously, as overt displays of power risk provoking Imperial friction or inquisitorial scrutiny. The final fate of Ark Mechanicus vessels is rarely documented with certainty. Unlike standard voidcraft, their operational timelines extend across epochs, making definitive conclusions difficult. Some are known to have been destroyed, though such events are exceptionally rare and often shrouded in redaction. Where destruction is confirmed, it typically occurs under extraordinary circumstances involving catastrophic warp incursions, sustained multi-fleet engagements, or internal system collapse following doctrinal breaches. More commonly, Ark Mechanicus vessels vanish. Records indicate multiple instances where an Ark Mechanicus departs on an exploratory or relocation mission and simply fails to return. No wreckage is recovered, no distress signals are logged. Astropathic echoes, if present, are incoherent or fragmentary. Administratum registries list these vessels as lost, though Mechanicum archives often retain ambiguous designations suggesting continued existence. Several explanations are proposed within restricted Mechanicum discourse. Some posit that these vessels entered regions of space beyond Imperial reach and continue to operate in isolation, fulfilling their mandate without external oversight. Others suggest controlled entry into long-term stasis, preserving the vessel and its contents until future reactivation conditions are met. A minority of theories propose deliberate self-sequestration to protect dangerous knowledge from misuse during periods of Imperial instability. There are also darker possibilities. In rare cases, Ark Mechanicus vessels are suspected to have succumbed to internal corruption, whether through warp exposure, doctrinal deviation, or uncontrolled machine intelligence evolution. Such scenarios are treated with extreme sensitivity, as they challenge foundational Mechanicum beliefs regarding machine sanctity. Documentation in these cases is aggressively sealed, and involved personnel often disappear from records entirely. What is clear is that Ark Mechanicus vessels are not decommissioned in the conventional sense. They are not scrapped, dismantled, or retired. Their existence is framed as a continuum rather than a life cycle. Even in apparent destruction, the possibility of data survival, system remnants, or self-contained vaults persists. The loss of an Ark Mechanicus is never considered absolute until proven beyond doubt, a standard rarely met. In the broader scope of Imperial history, Ark Mechanicus vessels occupy a unique position. They are relics of humanity's technological apex, adapted to survive its decline. They represent continuity in a civilization defined by decay. Their pilots are not heroes or conquerors, but custodians bound by doctrine to preserve what remains. Purpose and fate in this context are inseparable. An Ark Mechanicus exists to endure, whether through active operation, silent observation, or sealed stasis. Its ultimate function is persistence. It is designed to outlast empires, wars, and ideologies, carrying forward fragments of a future that humanity once believed inevitable. In that sense, the Ark Mechanicus does not end. It withdraws, it waits, or it continues beyond the reach of record and memory, fulfilling its mandate long after those who once catalogued it have turned to dust. From the perspective of the Adeptus Administratum, the Ark Mechanicus presents a persistent and unresolved logistical anomaly. Imperial governance is predicated on categorization, enumeration, and predictability. Every world, fleet, and resource is expected to exist within a framework of ledgers, quotas, and tithe schedules. The Ark Mechanicus resists all three. Administratum records acknowledge the existence of Ark Mechanicus vessels, but only in fragmented, compartmentalized formats. There is no unified registry. Instead, references appear scattered across naval transit logs, Crusade-era expedition summaries, Forge World requisition approvals, and sealed appendices attached to segmentum-level reports. These entries rarely agree on specifications, operational status, or even number. Attempts to consolidate this information have historically stalled or been quietly abandoned. The primary difficulty lies in jurisdiction. The Ark Mechanicus exists at the intersection of multiple Imperial authorities, while remaining fully subordinate to none. It is a void asset of extreme strategic value, yet it does not belong to the Imperial Navy. It is an industrial and technological hub, yet it is not a forge world. It carries populations numbering in the millions, yet it is not a recognized Imperial world, and therefore owes no formal planetary tithe. Administratum analysts frequently describe the Ark Mechanicus as a mobile exemption, a classification that allows its activities to be acknowledged without requiring integration into standard bureaucratic systems. This exemption is not codified in a single decree, but rather emerges from centuries of precedent, political compromise, and mutual deterrence between Imperial institutions. Logistical evaluations conducted by the Administratum focus primarily on observable effects rather than internal operations. These evaluations track the Ark Mechanicus through indirect indicators such as resource flow anomalies, sudden surges in Mechanicum production output, or unexplained shifts in regional supply stability. When an Ark Mechanicus enters a sector, nearby forge worlds often exhibit increased manufacturing efficiency, reduced material shortages, or rapid reconstruction following damage. These effects are measurable, even if their direct causes are not disclosed. One notable Administratum study from the late 39th millennium analysed supply fluctuations across 3 segmentum solar forge worlds, following the unannounced arrival of an Ark Mechanicus vessel. Within 2 standard years, production of macro cannon components increased by nearly 30%, while recorded labour losses declined sharply despite increased output. The study concluded that advanced automation systems had been deployed, though no official Mechanicum requisition records existed to confirm this. The Ark Mechanicus departed shortly thereafter, and production metrics gradually returned to baseline levels. From a logistical standpoint, Ark Mechanicus vessels appear to operate as stabilising agents within the Imperial industrial ecosystem. They compensate for inefficiencies, mitigate catastrophic losses, and accelerate recovery timelines. However, these benefits come at the cost of predictability. Administratum planners cannot reliably anticipate when or where an Ark Mechanicus will intervene, making long-term strategic modelling difficult. Attempts to quantify the resource consumption of an Ark Mechanicus have yielded limited results. Standard assumptions regarding fuel, raw materials, and manpower do not apply cleanly. These vessels demonstrate an ability to operate for centuries without resupply, drawing instead on internal recycling systems, matter conversion processes, and unknown energy reclamation technologies. Administratum analysts have described their logistical footprint as functionally closed, a designation otherwise reserved for theoretical models rather than active Imperial assets. Population logistics further complicate assessment. While exact crew numbers are unknown, estimates based on Habzone volume and life support throughput suggest populations comparable to medium-sized hive cities. Unlike hive populations, however, Ark Mechanicus inhabitants do not participate in standard Imperial census cycles. Birth rates, mortality, and workforce allocation are internally managed by the Mechanicus, with no external reporting. This renders demographic forecasting impossible, and removes a significant population from Imperial labour and tithe calculations. The Adeptus Mechanicus, by contrast, approaches the Ark Mechanicus from a fundamentally different analytical framework. Where the Administratum sees anomalies and exemptions, the Mechanicus sees continuity and preservation. Mechanicum records treat Ark Mechanicus vessels not as logistical challenges but as doctrinal pillars. Internal Mechanicus impressions emphasize lineage and function over efficiency metrics. Each Ark Mechanicus is documented as a sovereign extension of the machine god's will, carrying within it fragments of humanity's lost technological inheritance. As such, its logistical independence is not merely tolerated but celebrated. Dependence on external supply chains is viewed as doctrinal weakness rather than operational prudence. Mechanicum analytics focus heavily on system resilience and knowledge preservation. Reports prioritize assessments of data vault integrity, manufactoria output stability, and machine spirit coherence over material throughput. A vessel capable of producing less but enduring longer is considered superior to one optimized for short-term efficiency. This philosophical divergence from administratum values underpins much of the tension surrounding Ark Mechanicus oversight. Logistical findings within Mechanicum archives indicate that Ark Mechanicus vessels operate on a tiered resource allocation model. Core systems, including data vaults, power generation, and propulsion, receive absolute priority. Secondary systems such as manufactoria and defense arrays operate on adaptive cycles, scaling activity based on mission parameters and internal resource assessments. Non-essential systems may be placed into partial stasis for extended periods to conserve resources, sometimes spanning centuries. Material acquisition is similarly adaptive. While Ark Mechanicus vessels are capable of harvesting raw materials from asteroid fields, derelict ships, or planetary surfaces, they do so selectively. Mechanicum doctrine discourages unnecessary extraction, favouring efficiency and long-term sustainability. This restraint is often misinterpreted by external observers as inactivity, masking the vessel's true capabilities. Data from Mechanicum Analytics Division suggests that Ark Mechanicus vessels maintain extensive internal reserves of refined materials, spare components, and completed war assets. These reserves are not standardized. Instead, they reflect the vessel's historical mission profile and doctrinal alignment. An Ark Mechanicus assigned primarily to exploration may prioritize sensor arrays, survey drones, and data storage infrastructure. One aligned with military support may carry vast stockpiles of weapon components and armoured vehicles. Interaction between the Ark Mechanicus and local Forge worlds is governed by complex protocols. Requests for assistance are evaluated against doctrinal criteria rather than political necessity. Mechanicum impressions recorded in internal communiques emphasize the Ark Mechanicus role as a guardian of standards. It intervenes when knowledge is threatened, not when convenience demands it. This has led to documented cases where Forge worlds facing imminent collapse were denied Ark Mechanicus support due to perceived doctrinal deviation or insufficient technological purity. From a logistical analytics perspective, the Ark Mechanicus functions as a mobile redundancy node within the broader Mechanicum network. It carries copies of critical schemata, experimental research, and production templates that may not exist elsewhere. In the event of Forge world loss, these assets allow for reconstruction or redistribution of knowledge. Mechanicum models indicate that the loss of a single Ark Mechanicus would have cascading effects across multiple sectors, potentially erasing unique technological lineages. Administratum analysts are aware of this redundancy function but lack visibility into its scope. This asymmetry of information contributes to institutional unease. Several Administratum memoranda express concern that the Mechanicus possesses an independent continuity strategy capable of surviving even the collapse of centralized Imperial governance. While such concerns are typically couched in neutral language, they reveal underlying political anxiety. Joint Administratum Mechanicum logistical councils have attempted, with limited success, to establish clearer reporting standards for Ark Mechanicus operations. These efforts often stall over issues of doctrinal confidentiality and authority. Mechanicum representatives consistently assert that disclosure beyond certain thresholds risks misuse or corruption of sacred knowledge. Administratum delegates counter that the absence of data undermines Imperial strategic planning. Neither side has achieved decisive leverage. One area of partial convergence lies in threat assessment. Both institutions recognize the Ark Mechanicus as a strategic asset whose loss would be catastrophic. As a result, Administratum fleet routing often avoids placing Ark Mechanicus vessels in high-risk transit corridors unless explicitly requested. Similarly, Mechanicum analytics include predictive models estimating the impact of Ark Mechanicus destruction on regional stability, often concluding that recovery would take centuries if it were possible at all. Impressions recorded by Administratum observers who have directly encountered Ark Mechanicus vessels emphasize their psychological impact. Descriptions frequently note the unsettling scale, the absence of conventional communication protocols, and the sense of interacting with an entity rather than a ship. These subjective impressions are usually excluded from formal reports, but persist in marginal annotations and personal addenda. In contrast, Mechanicum impressions recorded during such encounters emphasize harmony and affirmation. Tech priests assigned to Ark Mechanicus liaison duties often describe heightened machine spirit resonance and doctrinal clarity. Some records suggest that prolonged exposure to an Ark Mechanicus environment results in accelerated cognitive alignment with Mechanicum principles, though such claims remain unverified and are treated cautiously. In aggregate, the logistical findings and analytics of both institutions converge on a single conclusion, expressed in markedly different terms. The Ark Mechanicus is not a consumable asset. It is not replaceable within any meaningful Imperial timeframe. Its value cannot be reduced to output metrics or strategic utility alone. For the Administratum, it represents a necessary complication, a disruption to orderly governance that must be accommodated rather than resolved. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, it represents continuity, insurance against oblivion, and proof that fragments of humanity's technological zenith still endure. Between these perspectives lies a shared, unspoken recognition. The Ark Mechanicus exists beyond the Imperium's ability to fully control or replicate. Its logistical independence is not a flaw to be corrected, but a condition of its survival, and that survival, according to both sets of records, has already outlasted countless Imperial systems, administrations, and wars. Recorded participation of Ark Mechanicus vessels in major wars is rare, not due to lack of capability, but due to deliberate restraint. Administratum war archives repeatedly note that Ark Mechanicus assets are almost never assigned through standard command channels. Their presence in a conflict typically occurs by Mechanicum initiative, often without prior disclosure to sector authorities. As a result, most battle records involving Ark Mechanicus vessels are reconstructed after the fact from fragmented fleet logs, astropathic echoes, and Mechanicum communiques released under restricted clearance. One of the earliest confirmed wartime deployments occurred during the latter stages of the Great Crusade, when a Mechanicum Ark was recorded operating alongside Imperial expeditionary fleets in compliance actions against technologically divergent human polities. Administratum summaries from this era describe the Ark as maintaining rear echelon positioning for extended periods, only entering active engagement when expeditionary forces encountered resistance, involving advanced void defenses or non-compliant machine intelligences. In one such engagement, a Crusade fleet stalled against a fortified orbital complex of pre-Imperial origin. Standard naval bombardment proved ineffective, with enemy defense grids adapting faster than Imperial targeting logic could compensate. The Ark Mechanicus entered the engagement zone after several days of stalemate. Fleet logs record a sudden collapse of enemy orbital coordination following sustained lance fire of unknown configuration. The engagement concluded within hours. Mechanicum records later attributed the victory to targeted disruption of enemy logic cores rather than brute force destruction, though technical details were withheld. Administratum analysts reviewing this engagement noted a recurring pattern. The Ark Mechanicus did not engage enemy forces broadly or indiscriminately. Instead, it applied force selectively, focusing on structural or systemic vulnerabilities that neutralized resistance rapidly once identified. This approach minimized collateral damage to recoverable infrastructure, aligning with Mechanicum priorities rather than Imperial conquest doctrine. During the Horus Heresy, Ark Mechanicus involvement becomes more opaque. Many records from this era are incomplete, contradictory, or intentionally redacted. What can be established is that several Ark Mechanicus vessels withdrew from direct Imperial oversight during the conflict, operating independently or aligning with specific Mechanicum factions. Some are suspected to have participated in engagements against traitor fleets, while others vanished entirely from record. One confirmed engagement during this period involved an Ark Mechanicus intercepting a traitor-aligned battle group attempting to seize a forge world with significant archaeotech reserves. Administratum reconstructions indicate that the Ark arrived without warning, emerging from warp translation at extreme proximity. Its opening volleys targeted traitor capital ships with precision lance strikes that disabled propulsion and void shields in rapid succession. Macro cannon fire followed, systematically dismantling immobilized vessels. Notably, the Ark did not pursue fleeing elements of the battle group. Once the immediate threat to the Forge world was neutralized, it withdrew to high orbit and ceased offensive action. Administratum observers interpreted this as incomplete victory. Mechanicum annotations appended to the report frame the engagement as a success, emphasizing preservation of assets rather than enemy annihilation. In the millennia following the heresy, Ark Mechanicus vessels appear sporadically in records associated with large-scale conflicts. Their involvement is most often linked to wars threatening Mechanicum infrastructure or knowledge repositories. During several Black Crusades, Ark Mechanicus vessels are recorded reinforcing forge worlds near the Cadian Gate, though their actions are rarely described in detail. One such incident during the late 38th millennium involved an Ark Mechanicus providing defense during a prolonged siege by Chaos fleets. Imperial Navy logs describe the Ark maintaining a stationary defensive posture above the Forge world, projecting layered void shields that extended partial coverage to nearby orbital platforms. Enemy bombardment intensified over several weeks, yet shield integrity remained largely intact. When the Ark finally engaged offensively, it did so with coordinated lance barrages synchronized with planetary defense grids. Enemy capital ships attempting to breach the shield perimeter were neutralized through sustained, focused fire rather than overwhelming salvos. The engagement lasted several days, after which Chaos forces withdrew. Post-battle assessments attribute the Forge world's survival primarily to the Ark's defensive capabilities and command coordination rather than raw firepower. Administratum tacticians analysing this battle noted that the Ark Mechanicus operated less like a warship and more like a command anchor. It stabilised the battle space, absorbed enemy aggression, and enabled other assets to function effectively. Its fighting style emphasised control and endurance rather than decisive breakthrough. Engagements against Xenos forces further illustrate this pattern. In conflicts involving Orc War incursions, Ark Mechanicus vessels are recorded avoiding direct confrontation with massed enemy fleets unless Mechanicum holdings were directly threatened. In one documented case, an Ark remained beyond visual range while deploying autonomous defense constructs and guided munitions to disrupt Orc fleet cohesion. Once the wear fragmented into smaller, less coordinated elements, Imperial Navy forces were able to engage successfully. Against Eldar forces, recorded encounters are limited and ambiguous. In several cases, Ark Mechanicus vessels appear to have avoided engagement entirely, altering course to prevent confrontation. Where contact did occur, it was brief and inconclusive. Administratum analysts speculate that advanced sensor and prediction systems aboard the Ark allowed it to anticipate enemy movements, rendering battle unnecessary. Mechanicum records neither confirm nor deny this interpretation. Tyrannid conflicts present a different dynamic. Ark Mechanicus involvement is extremely rare, but consistently intense. One heavily redacted report describes an Ark engaging a Tyrannid splinter fleet, approaching a Mechanicum research enclave. The Ark employed sustained long-range fire, prioritizing bioship synapse nodes identified through advanced analysis. Over time, Tyrannid coordination degraded, allowing Imperial forces to contain the threat. Mechanicum commentary on this engagement emphasizes the Ark's role in data acquisition as much as defense. Sensor arrays recorded biological adaptation patterns in real time, feeding data directly into onboard research vaults. This suggests that combat against Tyrannids was treated as an opportunity for study as well as survival. Fighting style across all recorded engagements remains consistent in its core principles. Ark Mechanicus vessels do not seek battlefield dominance through aggressive maneuvering or massed fire. Instead, they favor positional control, layered defense, and targeted application of overwhelming force at critical moments. They engage when necessary, disengage when objectives are met, and show little interest in pursuit or spectacle. Battle details from multiple wars indicate an emphasis on system-level warfare. Enemy propulsion, command structures, and data networks are prioritized over hull destruction. This approach reduces resource expenditure and preserves potential salvage, aligning with Mechanicum doctrines of efficiency and recovery. Administratum observers often misinterpret this as caution or indecision, though post-conflict analyses routinely demonstrate its effectiveness. Another notable aspect of Ark Mechanicus combat behavior is temporal patience. In several prolonged conflicts, Ark Mechanicus vessels maintained presence for decades, intervening only at critical junctures. This long-view approach contrasts sharply with Imperial Navy doctrines focused on decisive engagements and campaign resolution. For the Ark Mechanicus, time is not a limiting factor, but a resource to be leveraged. Internal Mechanicum battle analytics describe combat as a form of environmental interaction rather than opposition. Enemy forces are treated as variables to be constrained, redirected, or neutralized through system manipulation. This philosophy is reflected in weapon selection, targeting priorities, and engagement pacing. The Ark does not react emotionally to battlefield developments. It responds according to predictive models refined over centuries. Administratum, or colleges studying Ark Mechanicus engagements, consistently struggle to incorporate these patterns into existing tactical frameworks. Simulations attempting to replicate Ark behavior often fail due to assumptions about risk tolerance and command motivation. The Ark Mechanicus does not fight to win territory or prestige, it fights to preserve continuity. In summary, recorded wars and battles involving Ark Mechanicus vessels reveal a form of warfare distinct from conventional Imperial practice. Engagements are rare, deliberate, and tightly constrained by doctrinal priorities. When force is applied, it is precise, sustained, and devastating to enemy systems rather than formations. The Adeptus Administratum views this approach as strategically opaque but undeniably effective. The Adeptus Mechanicus views it as the correct expression of technological superiority tempered by restraint. Both agree on one point, though it is rarely stated explicitly. When an Ark Mechanicus enters a war, the nature of that war changes, not because of overwhelming aggression, but because the conflict is no longer measured in victories and defeats. It is measured in what is allowed to survive. Beyond the major conflicts most often cited in Imperial war archives, Ark Mechanicus vessels appear in a wide range of lesser documented wars, suppressions, and crises whose significance only becomes apparent in retrospect. These engagements are rarely dramatic in scale, yet their cumulative impact on Imperial survival and technological continuity is substantial. Administratum records from multiple segmenta reference Ark Mechanicus intervention during sector-wide collapses triggered by warp storms, mass insurrection, or cascading logistical failure. In such cases, the Ark Mechanicus does not arrive as a combatant, but as a stabilizing presence. Its actions frequently occur outside the formal structure of a declared war, complicating later classification. One recurring pattern involves Ark Mechanicus vessels appearing in systems where forge worlds or critical manufactoria face imminent loss due to internal failure rather than external attack. Examples include reactor chain failures, resource exhaustion, or systemic breakdown of servitor labor forces. Administratum After Action reports describe sudden reversals in these situations, marked by rapid restoration of output and system integrity following unannounced Mechanicum intervention. In one late 39th millennium incident, a forge world supplying void shield generators to 3 sector fleets experienced near-total grid collapse following centuries of overextension. Administratum forecast predicted irrecoverable failure within 2 decades. An Ark Mechanicus entered the system without prior notification, deployed extensive repair cadres, and restructured the Forge World's production architecture over the course of 11 standard years. Output not only recovered but exceeded pre-collapse levels. The Ark departed without formal acknowledgement. The Forge World's tithe classification was quietly upgraded the following century. Militarized engagements in these contexts tend to be defensive and localized. Ark Mechanicus vessels deploy internal security forces, automated defenses, and orbital denial systems to prevent opportunistic incursions while restoration is underway. These actions rarely escalate into fleet engagements, yet they decisively shape regional power dynamics. Administratum strategists reviewing these cases often conclude that the Ark's presence prevented secondary conflicts that would otherwise have emerged from perceived weakness. Additional battle records involve engagements with threats deemed unsuitable for standard Imperial response. These include isolated Necron tomb awakenings, unstable warp entities, and machine intelligences classified as non-compliant. Documentation in such cases is fragmentary and frequently sealed, but surviving summaries indicate that Ark Mechanicus vessels act decisively when technological or ontological integrity is threatened. In one heavily redacted case, an Ark Mechanicus is believed to have engaged a Necron installation during its early activation phase. Imperial Navy elements were not present. Astropathic monitoring detected intense energy fluctuations followed by abrupt cessation. Subsequent exploration of the system found the installation inert and partially dismantled. No Mechanicum explanation was released. Administratum analysts later annotated the file with a single conclusion: threat neutralized, assets recovered. Encounters with Chaos-aligned forces outside major crusades also appear sporadically. In these cases, Ark Mechanicus vessels prioritize containment over destruction. Warp-tainted fleets attempting to access Mechanicum vaults or research enclaves are intercepted and neutralized with minimal escalation. Administratum observers note that Ark Mechanicus engagements against Chaos demonstrate heightened caution, with extensive purification rites and post-conflict system audits conducted before withdrawal. Aftermath analysis across these additional wars reveals a consistent trend. Ark Mechanicus involvement results in long-term stabilization rather than immediate political gain. Systems touched by an Ark Mechanicus intervention often experience centuries of increased industrial reliability, doctrinal conformity, and reduced technological attrition. However, these benefits are accompanied by increased Mechanicum influence and decreased Administratum oversight. Administratum final analyses of Ark Mechanicus warfare emphasize both gratitude and concern. On one hand, Ark Mechanicus vessels have repeatedly preserved critical Imperial capabilities that would otherwise have been lost. Their interventions have shortened wars, prevented systemic collapse, and safeguarded irreplaceable knowledge. On the other hand, their autonomy undermines centralized planning and reinforces the perception that the Mechanicus operates according to priorities not fully aligned with Imperial governance. Several administratum conclaves have formally acknowledged that Ark Mechanicus vessels represent a parallel continuity structure within the Imperium. In the event of widespread administrative failure, they would likely persist, maintaining pockets of technological civilization independent of Terra's authority. This recognition is rarely voiced openly, but it informs long-term strategic anxiety within administratum leadership. From the Adeptus Mechanicus perspective, the analysis is both simpler and more absolute. Ark Mechanicus vessels are viewed as success cases. Each recorded survival, each recovered forge world, and each preserved data vault reinforces the doctrine that decentralization and redundancy are essential to humanity's endurance. Losses, while tragic, are framed as acceptable within a strategy measured in millennia. Mechanicum final analyses emphasize that Ark Mechanicus warfare is not reactive but preventative. Wars are not merely fought to defeat enemies, but to remove conditions that allow threats to emerge. This philosophy explains the Ark's preference for system-level intervention, long-duration presence, and selective engagement. Victory is defined as the continuation of function, not the destruction of opposition. In Mechanicum discourse, the aftermath of Ark Mechanicus engagements is often discussed in terms of correction rather than conquest. Worlds are realigned, production architectures are purified, knowledge pathways are secured. The Ark departs once equilibrium is restored, leaving behind a system more resilient than before, even if less autonomous. Where the Administratum sees a powerful but inconvenient ally, the Mechanicus sees a cornerstone of its faith made manifest. Where the Administratum measures wars in years and sectors, the Mechanicus measures outcomes in centuries and continuity curves. Both institutions, despite their differences, converge on a final assessment that appears repeatedly across sealed reports and marginal annotations. The Ark Mechanicus is not an instrument of war in the conventional Imperial sense. Its battles are secondary expressions of a deeper function. It exists to ensure that, regardless of how many wars are lost, how many worlds fall, or how many administrations collapse, humanity's capacity to build, to repair, and to remember does not vanish entirely. In the calculus of the Adeptus Administratum, this makes the Ark Mechanicus an asset too valuable to restrain and too powerful to fully integrate. In the calculus of the Adeptus Mechanicus, it confirms that the Ark Mechanicus fulfills its intended role exactly as designed. Inquisition awareness of the Ark Mechanicus does not originate from formal disclosure. It emerges instead through accumulation. Isolated investigations, anomalous case files, and sealed marginalia gradually converge toward the same object, approached from radically different angles. By the time the term Ark Mechanicus appears in inquisitorial archives, it is already burdened with qualifiers such as restricted, sensitive, and doctrinally volatile. Early Inquisition impressions describe the Ark Mechanicus not as a singular threat, but as an uncertainty too large to categorize. Unlike Xenos constructs, it is unquestionably human in origin. Unlike heretic creations, it remains doctrinally aligned with the cult Mechanicus. Unlike standard Imperial assets, it operates beyond conventional oversight. This combination places it in a narrow and uncomfortable category, indispensable but opaque. Inquisitors encountering Ark Mechanicus vessels consistently report difficulty applying standard investigative frameworks. Authority assertions that would normally compel disclosure from planetary governors, fleet commanders, or even chapter masters yield limited results when directed toward Mechanicum Ark command structures. Responses are precise, respectful, and incomplete. Information is provided exactly to the extent required by treaty and no further. Several Ordo dossiers describe the Ark Mechanicus as exhibiting what one inquisitor termed procedural invisibility. It does not evade notice in a physical sense. Its mass, emissions, and movements are detectable. Rather, it evades narrative containment. Records exist, but they do not align. Timelines overlap without synchronizing. Technical descriptions contradict without invalidating one another. Witness testimony remains consistent in effect, yet inconsistent in detail. Direct observation reports are rare and tightly sealed. Those that exist emphasize a recurring psychological effect experienced by inquisitorial personnel during proximity encounters. This effect is not described as fear, awe, or reverence, but as cognitive displacement. Observers report difficulty anchoring their perception of scale, duration, and hierarchy while aboard or near an Ark Mechanicus. Time estimates vary widely between individuals present at the same events. Personal chronometers frequently desynchronize without mechanical explanation. In one Ordo Malleus observation log, an Inquisitor notes that internal transit between two sections of an Ark Mechanicus took significantly longer than expected based on mapped distance, yet onboard instruments recorded no temporal anomaly. The discrepancy was dismissed by Mechanicum liaisons as internal routing variance. The Inquisitor flagged the explanation as insufficient but inconclusive. Unexplainable findings recur most often in relation to the Ark's machine intelligence systems. Inquisition doctrine draws a strict boundary between sanctioned machine spirits and prescribed artificial intelligence. Ark Mechanicus cores occupy a space uncomfortably close to that boundary. Multiple inquisitorial audits note behavioral complexity exceeding that of any approved Imperial system, including predictive adaptation, long-term goal persistence, and apparent prioritization beyond immediate command input. In one sealed case, an inquisitorial tech adept embedded aboard an Ark Mechanicus reported that the vessel initiated defensive posturing prior to the receipt of any confirmed threat data. Subsequent events validated the threat's emergence hours later. Mechanicum explanations cited probabilistic modeling and deep pattern analysis. The Inquisitor accepted the explanation formally, while privately annotating the incident as functionally precognitive. Observations concerning warp interaction are equally troubling. Ark Mechanicus vessels demonstrate anomalously stable warp translation profiles, particularly during prolonged voyages. Astropathic monitoring during such transits records reduced background distortion and diminished psychic turbulence relative to vessel mass. In isolated cases, astropaths report a sense of resistance when attempting to perceive the Ark within the warp, as though its presence displaced or muted empiric currents. One Ordo Hereticus file documents an attempt to trace an Ark Mechanicus through warp echoes following an unscheduled departure. The attempt failed. No trail degradation was detected, there was simply no trace. The vessel reappeared months later in a different segmentum without detectable warp signature continuity. The event remains unresolved. Inquisitorial concern intensifies around reports of internal zones within Ark Mechanicus vessels that resist standard surveillance. Servoskull reconnaissance, Auspex sweeps, and psychic probing all encounter areas of degraded return quality. These zones are consistently identified as data vaults, research sanctums, or power core adjacencies. Mechanicum doctrine asserts absolute prohibition on access, citing existential risk to knowledge integrity. While such restrictions are legally defensible under the Treaty of Mars, they trigger inquisitorial suspicion. In several cases, inquisitors have formally requested access and been denied. These denials are not confrontational. They are procedural, accompanied by citations of precedent and mutual destruction thresholds. No instance is recorded where the Inquisition forcibly attempted entry. Unexplainable biological findings have also been recorded. Medical audits of Ark Mechanicus crew and priesthood reveal patterns inconsistent with baseline human physiology. While extensive augmentation accounts for much of this divergence, some anomalies remain. Cellular aging markers appear suppressed or irregular. Neural tissue exhibits atypical regenerative behavior in certain individuals. Inquisitorial Medicae assessments classify these findings as non-heretical, but unexplained. There are also persistent reports of individuals who enter Ark Mechanicus service and are never recorded again outside Mechanicum archives. Inquisitorial census comparisons indicate population drift exceeding standard loss rates. Mechanicum explanations cite internal reassignment, data integration roles, or fatal augmentation failure. None of these explanations are demonstrably false. None are independently verifiable. Of particular interest to the Inquisition are cases where Ark Mechanicus vessels intersect with inquisitorial operations without apparent coordination. Several Ordo Xenos investigations note Ark Mechanicus arrivals in systems under covert surveillance shortly before the emergence of Xenos threats. In each case, the Ark departed before direct confrontation occurred, leaving behind altered conditions that simplified subsequent Imperial response. Inquisitorial analysis struggles to determine whether these intersections are coincidence, prediction, or indirect response to signals the Inquisition itself does not perceive. No evidence of hostile intent is recorded. Nonetheless, the pattern is noted. The most heavily sealed findings concern Ark Mechanicus disappearances. Inquisitorial attempts to investigate lost Arks frequently encounter data obfuscation layers beyond standard Mechanicum encryption. In a handful of cases, recovered fragments suggest deliberate withdrawal rather than destruction. Hypotheses range from deep space sequestration to controlled entry into regions of space subject to non-linear temporal effects. None are confirmed. Inquisition impressions taken as a whole resist synthesis into a single threat profile. The Ark Mechanicus does not behave as a heretical construct. It does not exhibit Xenos alignment. It does not seek influence over Imperial governance, and yet it operates with a degree of autonomy, foresight, and resilience that exceeds acceptable norms. Final annotations in several Ordo archives converge on a shared cautionary stance. The Ark Mechanicus is not to be confronted without absolute necessity. Its destruction would constitute an irreparable loss to humanity. Its unchecked evolution, however, represents an unknown variable with implications extending beyond current doctrinal frameworks. For the Inquisition, this places the Ark Mechanicus in a category reserved for very few entities. It is not an enemy, it is not an ally. It is a condition of reality that must be monitored, documented, and contained through understanding rather than force. And understanding in this case remains incomplete. Inquisitorial scrutiny intensifies wherever Ark Mechanicus vessels intersect directly with recorded wars and large-scale engagements. While the Mechanicus maintains that Arks serve purely logistical, exploratory, or knowledge preservation roles, battlefield data complicates this claim. When present, Ark Mechanicus involvement rarely conforms to conventional Imperial doctrines of war. Anomalies are most evident in engagements where Ark Mechanicus assets operated in proximity to Imperial fleets without assuming formal command roles. In multiple recorded conflicts, Ark Mechanicus vessels neither integrated into standard battle formations nor remained strictly rear echelon. Instead, they occupied positions of strategic ambiguity, neither vanguard nor reserve, yet exerted disproportionate influence on battle outcomes. One sealed Ordo Xenos report details a sector-wide conflict against a migrating Ork warhost. Imperial Navy elements reported escalating losses and disorganized counter-offensives. An Ark Mechanicus entered the system mid-conflict without prior coordination. It did not engage the Ork fleet directly. Instead, it conducted sustained energy discharges towards specific void regions, later identified as high-density fungal spore concentrations and nascent mechship construction zones. Within days, Ork fleet cohesion collapsed. Imperial victory followed with minimal further Ark involvement. Inquisitorial analysis flagged the engagement as anomalous due to the Ark's apparent understanding of Ork reproductive and logistical infrastructure beyond then-current Ordo Xenos projections. Mechanicum briefings offered post-hoc explanations referencing deep xenological archives. The Inquisition noted that no prior requests for Ork data had been logged. Documented encounters with Chaos forces raised deeper concerns. In several conflicts involving traitor fleets or warp-tainted war zones, Ark Mechanicus vessels demonstrate a marked resistance to corruption vectors. Warp-based weaponry exhibits diminished efficacy when directed at Ark hulls. Boarding attempts, where recorded, result in catastrophic failure for attacking forces, often without clear causation. A sealed Ordo Malleus battle record describes a Wordbearer's assault against an Imperial forge system. An Ark Mechanicus anchored near the system's primary manufactorum world. During the engagement, Vox traffic from traitor vessels deteriorated rapidly, punctuated by reports of machine spirit interference, data corruption, and hostile environmental conditions within their own ships. No psychic null field signatures were detected. No known anti-demonic technologies were identified. The Ark Mechanicus did not fire upon the traitor fleet directly. Following the battle, recovered traitor vox logs referenced hostile logic, devotional collapse, and machine silence. The Mechanicum dismissed these as the ravings of corrupted minds. The Order Malleus retained the logs under sealed classification. Several wars feature Ark Mechanicus vessels acting in ways that suggest anticipatory deployment. In one documented case, an Ark arrived in a system weeks before the outbreak of a major Tyranid incursion. It conducted large-scale stellar surveys and resource extractions, then withdrew shortly before the first confirmed bioship contacts. Imperial defenders later benefited from altered orbital conditions, pre-positioned debris fields, and disrupted gravitational vectors, all traceable to Ark activity. Inquisitorial post-action review questioned whether the Ark had prior knowledge of the Tyranid arrival. Mechanicum representatives denied any such intelligence, citing routine exploratory patterns. The Inquisition noted that no other Imperial exploratory assets were present in the region at the time. Direct encounters between Inquisitorial personnel and Ark Mechanicus command elements during wartime are exceptionally rare, but where recorded, they are unsettling in their formality. One Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor describes meeting a senior Magos during a joint defensive operation. The Magos demonstrated complete awareness of inquisitorial objectives that had not been formally disclosed. When questioned, the Magos attributed this to statistical inevitability derived from observable preparations. The Inquisitor's private annotation reads, "Either they predicted my actions with unacceptable precision, or my actions were never my own to begin with." Sealed reports also document engagements where Ark Mechanicus intervention appears deliberately minimal even when Imperial defeat seemed imminent. In several such cases, Ark withdrawal preceded catastrophic Imperial losses. Subsequent analysis suggests that these defeats eliminated threats later identified as strategically destabilizing or doctrinally compromised elements within Imperial command structures. The Inquisition has not formally accused the Mechanicus of selective non-intervention. However, internal memoranda question whether Ark Mechanicus strategic models prioritize outcomes beyond immediate Imperial survival metrics. This concern remains unproven but persistent. Of particular note are battle records involving Xenos technologies of unknown provenance. In two separate engagements against non-classified Xenos constructs, Ark Mechanicus vessels engaged directly and decisively, deploying weapon systems not observed elsewhere in Imperial arsenals. Sensor logs from accompanying Imperial ships show data dropout during these engagements, followed by the complete absence of Xenos remnants. Recovered Auspex records from one such battle contain data blocks that cannot be decrypted using known Imperial or Mechanicus cipher frameworks. The files remain archived under Inquisitorial seal, flagged for potential non-linear data structure analysis. The most heavily restricted sealed reports involve Ark Mechanicus actions that appear to violate established temporal causality. In one incident, an Ark engaged a hostile fleet that, according to Imperial records, had not yet arrived in the system. The hostile fleet was later confirmed destroyed upon entry, with damage patterns matching Ark weapon signatures logged weeks earlier. Mechanicum explanations cited record-keeping errors and sensor misalignment. Inquisitorial chronometric crosschecks found no systemic faults. The incident remains classified as unresolved. Across all documented wars and battles, one conclusion emerges with uncomfortable consistency. Ark Mechanicus vessels do not fight wars in the manner of Imperial forces. They do not seek decisive victories, glorious stands, or total annihilation of enemies. Their actions appear corrective rather than reactive, as though conflicts are variables to be adjusted rather than events to be endured. For the Inquisition, this reframes the Ark Mechanicus from a powerful asset to a strategic wildcard. Its battlefield anomalies do not indicate rebellion or heresy. They indicate a mode of analysis and action that operates at a scale and depth beyond standard Imperial comprehension. Sealed Ordo summaries conclude that Ark Mechanicus involvement in war represents a form of meta-strategic intervention, one that preserves humanity not battle by battle, but across probabilities, timelines, and knowledge states. Whether this represents humanity's greatest safeguard or its most dangerous dependency remains unanswered. The highest classification files concerning the Ark Mechanicus are not battle records, anomaly logs, or encounter reports. They are meta-analytical documents. These files do not ask what the Ark Mechanicus has done. They ask what the Ark Mechanicus is becoming and what it represents within the long arc of human survival. Within inquisitorial archives, Ark Mechanicus vessels are no longer treated as singular artifacts. They are treated as a category of strategic phenomenon. Each ark is unique in construction, cognition architecture, and internal hierarchy, yet inquisitorial analysts increasingly assess them as expressions of a shared operational philosophy that diverges subtly but meaningfully from Imperial orthodoxy. One of the earliest classified syntheses originates from a closed Ordo Majoris symposium convened in late millennia 41, year 800. The symposium's stated purpose was to evaluate the cumulative implications of Mechanicus autonomy in extreme technological assets. Ark Mechanicus vessels formed the central case study. The resulting document avoids accusory language. Instead, it introduces a reframing. The Ark Mechanicus is defined not as a ship, but as a sovereign operational system. It possesses mobility, self-sustainment, independent strategic logic, and a mandate derived from knowledge preservation rather than Imperial command hierarchy. This reframing carries profound implications. The Imperium tolerates autonomous actors only when their objectives align predictably with Imperial survival. The Ark Mechanicus aligns with survival, but not always with the Imperium as it presently exists. Classified longitudinal studies indicate that Ark deployments correlate more strongly with long-term sector stability than with immediate Imperial victory. In several cases, Ark absence coincides with catastrophic Imperial losses, followed decades later by increased resilience and doctrinal reform in successor systems. While correlation does not imply intent, inquisitorial analysts note the pattern persists across disparate regions and eras. One sealed appendix states, without elaboration, that Ark Mechanicus strategic modelling appears to accept loss as a necessary input variable. This observation is not presented as condemnation, it is presented as divergence. Further classified files focus on internal Ark governance. Despite Mechanicus' claims of strict adherence to Martian hierarchy, Inquisition infiltration attempts, both overt and covert, have failed to produce a consistent command schema. Magi titles persist, but authority within Ark environments appears distributed across overlapping cognitive strata. Biological Magi, augmented councils, semi-autonomous machine intelligences, and archivist systems whose decision-making logic is inaccessible to external audit. Inquisition Texiers attempting deep audit procedures report systemic resistance that does not manifest as hostility, but as deflection. Requests are fulfilled partially. Data is provided abundantly but never exhaustively. Crucial decision pathways are summarized rather than exposed. One Ordo Hereticus analyst described the experience as being educated by a teacher who knows precisely how much ignorance you're permitted to retain. The most heavily restricted classified files concern Ark cognition cores. While the Mechanicus denies the existence of abominable intelligence, Inquisition black box analyses suggest Ark machine cognition exceeds the complexity of sanctioned cogitator systems by several orders of magnitude. These systems do not exhibit independence in the sense defined by pre-heresy artificial intelligences. They do not express desire, ambition, or self-preservation. Instead, they exhibit goal continuity. Once an Ark Mechanicus commits to a long-term objective such as data preservation, xenotechnological observation, or stellar anomaly mapping, it will pursue that objective across centuries, adapting methods without revisiting purpose. Inquisition cognitive specialists note that this behavior resembles neither human command structures nor historical men of iron models. It represents a third category, constrained persistence. Classified projections suggest that if Ark cognition systems were ever unshackled from Mechanicus doctrinal limits, their operational scope could eclipse sector-level governance within decades. The files immediately follow this projection with a notation. No evidence suggests such unshackling is desired or being attempted. Nevertheless, contingency protocols exist. Another cluster of classified files addresses Ark Mechanicus interactions with the warp. Despite repeated exposure, Ark systems demonstrate anomalously low rates of corruption, possession, or cognitive destabilization. This resistance does not appear to rely on null fields, faith-based wards, or conventional psychic countermeasures. Instead, Ark warp exposure results in aggressive data compartmentalization. Affected systems isolate corrupted data segments, rewrite internal pathways, and continue function without attempting purification. Inquisitorial analysts describe this as acceptance rather than resistance. This behavior alarms Ordo Malleus representatives. Chaos is not defeated by isolation alone, yet Ark survivability metrics remain unmatched. The Inquisition cannot determine whether this represents ignorance of chaos metaphysics or a fundamentally different threat model. Classified encounter summaries also highlight Ark Mechanicus' refusal to engage in certain forms of warfare. Arks do not conduct exterminatus actions. They do not deploy population-level eradication protocols. Even when capable, they abstain. When questioned, Mechanicus responses cite inefficiency, data loss, and irreversible knowledge destruction. This places Ark logic at odds with established inquisitorial doctrine. One sealed Ordo Xenos memorandum states plainly that the Ark Mechanicus values information continuity over ideological purity. The statement is not followed by judgment, it is followed by risk assessment. In the most restricted tier of files, known informally as the Black Margin Compendium, Inquisitors are permitted to speculate. These sections are explicitly labelled as non-doctrinal and non-actionable. They exist to capture thought, not policy. Within these pages, several Inquisitors raise the possibility that Ark Mechanicus vessels represent humanity's subconscious attempt to outgrow its own dogma, not through rebellion, but through parallel evolution. While the Imperium enforces survival through control, fear, and sacrifice, the Ark Mechanicus enforces survival through memory, prediction, and adaptation. This interpretation is immediately challenged by counter-arguments emphasizing the dangers of post-human strategic entities. One Inquisitor writes that humanity once trusted machines to think for it, and paid the price in fire and extinction. Another responds that humanity now refuses to think beyond ritual and is paying a different price. No consensus is reached. Final classified recommendations regarding the Ark Mechanicus are cautious to the point of restraint. The Inquisition does not advocate seizure, destruction, or direct oversight. All such actions are assessed as catastrophic in probability modelling. Instead, the standing directive is observation without interference. Ark Mechanicus vessels are to be monitored, not commanded. Their movements logged, not restricted. Their data exchanges recorded, not decoded unless necessary. Inquisitors are advised to treat Ark entities as allied but non-subordinate actors. A single sentence appears repeatedly across final summaries, attributed to different authors across centuries. The Ark Mechanicus does not threaten the Imperium today. The sentence is always followed by a second line, never identical in wording but consistent in meaning. It may, however, define what survives after it. The terminal file closes with a doctrinal annotation rather than a conclusion. It states that the Ark Mechanicus embodies a paradox at the heart of the Imperium. Humanity depends on it, fears it, and does not fully understand it. To destroy it would be to blind itself. To control it may be impossible. To ignore it would be negligent. Thus, the Inquisition records the Ark Mechanicus not as heresy, not as salvation, but as inevitability. The file is sealed.